what a way to come back. Wait for it. There it is. Let's go. Man, what a way to come back. Honestly, seeing a Cordae video with Lil Wayne using the texture pack is so cool. I grew up listening to Lil Wayne. Cordae is obviously a beast and has a super bright future. So I was really excited when I saw that. You guys, as soon as the music video came out, started DMing me like, yo, they used your pack, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't even get to figure out by myself. Still really cool. Basically, in this video, I'm going to be teaching all the paper effects that were done in that music video. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. I really like the way they did the effects. And a lot has changed since I left YouTube. You can no longer dislike videos, or I guess you can dislike videos, but you can't see if the videos are disliked, and I have to go like into the analytics. Anyways, it's hard to see, so you might as well click like. And if we get 1,500 likes, I'm going to be sending a sample version or a little sneak peek of the new pack that I've been working on to a few commenters. So go ahead, drop a like, drop a comment down below, and you'll have a chance to get my new pack a little bit early, just a little sneak peek of it. And honestly, it feels really good to be back uploading on YouTube after everything that happened. So thank you guys for being patient. But yeah, we're going to be uploading consistent content again, try out some new stuff as well as the old tutorials that you guys are used to. So let's get into the video. What's good? We're back in this thing. Man, that feels good to say. Let's get in the video and break down these effects. So first off, the video that I was referencing at the beginning was Cordae, Sinister featuring Lil Wayne. Crazy, crazy. Number 10 on trending right now. I think it was a little higher earlier on. But the two effects we're going to be going over is this effect right here with this transition where it cuts to Cordae. I like the paper look. It looks really cool. There's a bunch of stuff going on. I'm going to break down all of that. And as well as the one that is used a little bit later on over here, where it's just a transition. This one's a little bit more simpler to do, but I still think it looks really good. So be sure to watch all the way to the end to learn how to do both of those. And if you want to snag and support the channel, paper assets we're going to be using and the ones that were used in that music video are from the Ultimate Texture Bundle V2 and V1. I'm going to be using both. You can go ahead, choose which one you like more, or snag both of them if you really feel generous and want to support a lot and get a lot of paper textures. And one last thing, just shout out to whoever in this project decided to include my pack in on this project. Here's all of the credits. I'm assuming it's probably the editor, Joanne or Joan, and Digital Sword. So shout out them. If it's not them, go show support to everyone that's worked on this project. Really clean music video. I really liked everything in the music video. Honestly, the colors were on point, the theme, and just the set design, everything was really, really good. So if you want to support some really dope creatives, go and follow all of these people in the description. It's really crazy to think how many different projects have used my pack now. And like, I made it less than a year ago in my bedroom, and now it's being used with like Kid Leroy, Cordae, Lil Wayne, Polo G, Lil Durk, Meek Mill, like all these artists, Lil Mosey, the Miami Bucks are using it on their Instagram. Like, it's crazy to think that I made that less than a year ago in my bedroom, and now it's just being used all over. So it's really, obviously really high quality product. I spent a lot of time on it. I know it is. I just want to share the most possible ways that you can use it. So I'm bringing the most value to you guys. If you do, go ahead and choose to support the channel. Speaking of that, if you use the code Sinister at checkout, I'll give you a little discount code, a little secret thing. I like to, help out the people on YouTube a little bit more. I don't do discount codes for anyone else. If you watch my YouTube videos, you support me there. Want to kick back a little bit. So use code Sinister at checkout and you'll get a little discount. So now going back into Premiere, I already have done both of these effects. So I want to show you my version so you can kind of see what you're going to get. You kind of tweak it. I didn't want to do it exactly. Obviously, it's good to put your own twist on things, but I also wanted to show like the concepts and kind of how to do all the stuff. I didn't want to go too far away, but I also didn't want to copy it exactly. So this is what we came up with for that Cordae transition where it kind of popped out and it looked like there was ripped paper behind them. Something I came up with. Pretty similar. I followed like the same clip and everything, so it does definitely look really, really similar, but it also has our own little twist on it, and I'll go through and how to do all that, as well as here is the Lil Wayne transition. I really like the way this came out. This one took me like only a few minutes to do, so I really do think this is a good transition. So anyways, let's start with this transition here, the Cordae one where it pops up. This one's a little bit more complex, but it's really not that hard. And if you followed any of my tutorials I've done in the past with paper rips and stuff and using Photoshop and Premiere, you're probably gonna be able to follow along just fine. But if not, and you haven't watched any of those tutorials before, I'm gonna make it as simplistic as possible. Just be sure to kind of follow along and don't skip through too far ahead, because I do mention some really important keybinds and just stuff that you can click in Photoshop that's gonna speed up your process a lot. While you're doing these effects, you do want them to look really high quality, but you also want to be efficient, because if you're spending 30-40 minutes on an effect that's lasting a second in your music video, you're not really being that efficient. So our whole priority, in Photoshop is just be quick, efficient, and make it look good. So we could do some effects like this once you get used to it in just a few minutes. Anyways, to get started for that first effect, I just took some screenshots from the music video, basically just some like texture stuff, kind of showcasing where we are at in the scene. So I got this screenshot of a radio and then the wider picture. This is actually where it starts off. And then I just did one other wide one just at a different angle so we can, kind of cut between those two, as well as 3 separate frames of Cordae in the next scene that we're transitioning to. This is where you kind of cut out Cordae. So if you were to do this for your music video, I'd suggest like 2 to 3 kind of texture shots just showcasing the scene that you're transitioning from, and then have the like 2 to 3 cutouts of your person, whoever you're transitioning to the next scene. That way you can kind of do that like mask out transition there. So in total, there's 6 screenshots, and I'm gonna be breaking down all of that. And to take a screenshot to transfer it over to Photoshop, go ahead and go down here to the export frame key once you found a frame in your video. So you can just kind of scroll through, find a frame that you want, and then say you wanted this frame right here, go to the export frame. You can click Control-Shift-E or Command-Shift-E if you're on the Mac, and it's gonna prompt the pop-up window. Or you could go ahead down here and click it. If you don't see that option with the camera, click this little plus button over here, and you will be able to find it and then drag it down here so you can see it. And then I always save as a PNG. JPEG works just as fine. Those are the 2 formats that I mostly use and I'd recommend. You can see this is the Photoshop file that I finished up with, and I just kind of want to show you just so you can visualize what the effect's going to start off with. So I have that first image, and then after that, it's just taking a little bit from that, having that paper rip, another frame from that radio clip, one last frame just with some paper behind it, and then the 3 Cordae shots. And that's pretty much all you really need to transfer it back into Premiere. But now we're going to go over how to make all of those paper rips. So I'm going to start off with a new project file, just how you are, and click new, depending on what version of Photoshop you're on, and then do your sequence settings. Whatever your project file you're working on in Premiere is, you're probably going to want to match that in Photoshop. So for our case, 1920 by 1080. If you're working in 4K, be sure to match that 3840 by 2160, I believe. And then I keep a resolution of like 300 pixels per inch most of the time. And then go to your screenshots. I'd recommend saving them all to like one folder. That way you can kind of easily see where they're all at. You can see I got the Cordae transition and the Wayne screenshots all in one, not too complicated. So we're gonna drag in that frame that we wanted to start with. If we go back to Premiere, you can see we just wanted to start with this frame right here. Kind of freezes, and the transition comes in. Whatever frame you want to start with, I'd recommend just dragging that in. And then just like that, we already have first frame. It's already named 2, but I would like to change it to 1. That way when we go back into Premiere, you can see the order really easily, and it'll speed up the process. So basically every single time you're done with one rip or whatever, just be sure to save it as that number. That way you can easily go and add the transition in Premiere. So now all we need to do is make frame look like it's ripped on paper. So to do that, I'm going to be using the Ultimate Texture Bundle of V1 for this transition. And if you go to the paper rips and folds, and if you just drag on any of these black sheets here, it should do the job. I'm going to scale it up just a little bit, and we're going to put it down in that same corner, kind of how we started off with last time. Doesn't have to be exact or whatever, but just something where Cordae's in frame. And then what you're going to want to do is turn blending mode to screen on any of the paper textures that you drag in. And I'm just going to frame it up a little bit better. That way you can see Cordae and maybe twist it just a little bit. And I noticed in their transition, it wasn't super noticeable that it was paper. This was a little bit more black, and then it kind of looked like it was like old paper, and it was like dingy and like brown. We'll go through and kind of show you how to do that as well. The first thing I always like to do is right click on that black sheet or your paper texture, whatever paper texture you're using, go to convert to smart object, and that's just going to allow you to add filters and be able to go back and change it later. And then if you go up to the top left, go to image adjustments. Let's start off with curves. And what the curves is going to do, it's going to allow you, if you drag down here, it's going to be all the shadows. So it's going to make that, kind of blown out spot where it's a little bit, you can really tell it's paper. Just make it a little less noticeable. I really like the way that looks right there, so I'm going to leave it there. But if you ever want to go back and change how it looks or whatever, you can double click on curves down here. Now that you made it a smart filter, you can change it. Maybe we didn't want it just as much. And then the other thing I'm going to do is go to image adjustments and go to photo filter. And I'm going to click color. And on this orange, I'm just going to drag it down a little bit so it's like a brownish orange. And then if you bring up the percent, you can kind of see, starts making that look a little dingy. I don't want to make it too noticeable, but just something around 69 works perfectly here. So I'm going to click OK. So then what we want to do, just to make the workflow super efficient and you don't have to add these smart filters to every paper texture that you add on, what I'm going to do is duplicate this background layer. It's going to say one copy or whatever your name is, copy, and just name this smart filter. And you can drag this down below, right click on it and convert to smart object, just how we did with the paper texture. and then I'm gonna turn it off so it's not visible. And this is just to store the smart filters. That way when we merge and do stuff later, you won't lose them and you can drag it onto any paper texture you want. So then just hold Alt on your keyboard and you see where it says smart filters underneath whatever paper texture you used. Hold Alt and then click on smart filters. You'll see these two circles show up, and then drag that down to your smart filter layer. Now you can see if you click this arrow on the right hand side, it'll pop down and the smart filters will be there. So now you can do that to any paper texture you add on in the future. So the next step I want to do is kind of just show the area with the paper texture. So I don't want to see this part over here. What I'm going to do is click Control on the thumbnail of your paper texture. So it's going to make these marching ants just around where you want this image to show up. So we don't want to see this guy, we just want to see Cordae. And to do that, click on your image layer, whatever you want to separate, and click Control J. Now you can see if I turn that off, it's only going to show up here. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. I'm going to control click on both of these layers, the paper texture and the image itself, and click Merge Layers, and then rename this to 2. Now you can see it'll start off as image 1, and then it'll go to 2, where it pops up. You can even like scale it up, but we'll do all that stuff in Premiere later on anyways. But you can see kind of how that like just adds a little bit subtle movement to it or whatever. But we're going to Control Z that real quick. Now I'm going to add this radio layer in just so we can add that as texture as well. You can use the same paper texture or you can go and use a different one. I'm going to use a different one. I just like variety. I think it makes it look a lot better for the end result. And then again, turn that to screen so you're going to see that. And then remember that we made that smart filter layer. So now you can go hold Alt on your keyboard and drag that up to the black sheet layer. It's going to instantly make it look like the exact other piece of paper. Now if we turn off that background layer, you can see it looks exactly the same. They look like they have some color and they have the same like opacity. So it's really convenient for adding on multiple paper textures and just increasing your workflow. So then again, holding Control and clicking on that thumbnail, and then going and making sure you're selected on your image layer and clicking Control J. I'm gonna delete that image layer there. Now we have the black sheet and then the cutout of the image itself. And I'm just gonna Control click on both of those and merge layer again. And then we can name that 3. So now you can see the process is going to have the first image, second image, and third image pop up. Let's do one last final one and then have Cordae pop out as a cutout. Let's drag in another image. It's pretty much the same one that we started off with. And then I kind of just want the middle section, just the guy and the radio, not Cordae or the left-hand side. So I'm just going to go to this rectangle tool over here, highlight the area that I want, and then click Control J while you're selected on that image. And I'm going to delete that. So now you can see we have this image itself, just the dude and the radio. And then I do want to make it look like that torn paper, but we're going to use a little different technique just to add a little bit of variety and just make something similar that they did in the music video itself. So to do that, I'm going to be using an eraser from the Mega Pack on Adobe. It's free for all Adobe users. I'll have it linked down below. I highly suggest it. If you use Adobe and you use Photoshop a lot, pretty much a no-brainer. It takes a few seconds to download and install. Once you go ahead and download it, just click this cog up here, go to Import Brushes, and then just drag in the Mega Pack and click Load. And then you'll see the Mega Pack, click down, and you have erasers, drawing box, all this stuff. I use all of them in a lot of my different tutorials. I'd highly suggest getting it. It's free if you're an Adobe user. And then I'm just going to be using the Kyle Natural Edge, and then just select on the layer you want to erase. In our case, this layer with the radio and the guy, and then just erase the edges, and it just makes it a little rough and look a little bit better. If you want a better look at it, you can move all the other images, just toggle the eye so you can see what you're actually doing. I'm going to go quick for the sake of tutorial, make it look good, make it look however you want. Pretty easy to make it look like torn paper if you just go through and then just touch up the edges a little bit. And then I'm going to use a similar like checkerboard paper texture that they did in the music video in our effect here. So from the Ultimate Texture Bundle, a V1, the Paper Textures Pack, Paper Sheet 4, it is like a checker, very similar to what they had. So I just like stretching it out and just holding Shift. So it's not going to be the same proportion, but just fit it kind of behind image. And I'm going to drag it right below that layer. Now you can see it kind of looks like it's on this piece of paper. And to really sell that effect, I'm going to be going through using that eraser, just how we did on the image itself, but just give it a little bit extra layover or whatever. And I think it just kind of sells the effect a little bit more. You can go close to it, or you can make it a little further out. All is going to work just the same. It's all personal preference, and that's where you can kind of get your creativity for the effect. And then I want to apply the smart filter layer, but since we went ahead and erased it, it's actually not a smart object. So go ahead, convert that to a smart object, then drag that sheet on. And now you can see it kind of gives it that dingy paper look again. which again just sells the effect a little bit more. So then again, just control clicking both of these layers, clicking merge layers, and then we can rename that to 4 because that's going to be the fourth thing to pop up. Now we got background layer, this layer, and then that layer. Pops up like that. I'm actually just going to move it to the right just a little bit, so it's a little bit more centered. And now you pretty much get the idea of how to do everything. So I'm just going to show one cutout of Cordae. That way we don't have to go through and do every single frame by frame, because once you get the idea, you pretty much know how to do it. So to do a cutout, what I would do is I would use this lasso tool up here, and then I would just go roughly close to the subject you're trying to cut out. For our case, Cordae, get up here. It doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to do that roughen edges anyways. So as soon as you're kind of close, you can go ahead and click Control J, just how we did before. I'm going to delete the background layer and go through with the eraser tool. I'm going to turn off all these layers so we can see what we're working with. This is my favorite part of the transition that they did, just having the subject Cordae kind of cut out like roughly. It's like a cool mixture between like a freeze frame and kind of like rotoscoping. So I like the way they did this. To save time, I'm going to go and drag that same sheet, that checkerboard sheet in, and we can kind of shift while scaling it just like that. Drag it below Cordae, control click on Cordae so it outlines the subject of Cordae. Make sure you're selected on that paper sheet layer. Click Control J, turn off that paper sheet layer, and now you won't be able to see it, but if you turn off Cordae, you see it has the same exact outline. And just to save time, all you have to do now is just scale up that checkerboard sheet here, and it's going to be the exact same thing pretty much. I'm going to have a rough outline of them. It's going to be smaller or bigger in certain spots, but I like the way that looks, honestly. And then remember, we have to convert this to a smart object, and then hold Alt on your smart layers and drag it up to the checkerboard layer. And just like that, you have the first cutout. And then you would just do that for every single cutout. I did 3 in my effect, so it doesn't really take too much longer. And once you get it down, so then control click on those layers, merge, and let's name that 5. And I'll show you how to do and transfer it over in Premiere. One last thing before we do go ahead and go over to Premiere, we actually do want to save this as a Photoshop file. So before we save as a Photoshop file, we just want to make sure that all the images that we want to show in Premiere just to have the eyeball on. So we want 1 through 5 turned on, but the smart filter layer we don't want on, background layer, any extra paper sheets that you have on that you don't actually want to be seen in the effect, just have them turned off. So we only have 5 layers turned on, and that's exactly what we want. The file, save as, and let's name this Cordae transition. Just name it whatever you want, and then we'll just name this tut for the sake of the tutorial. And then all you have to do is just drag in your Photoshop file into your project area in Premiere. And then it's going to ask you to merge all layers, and you're not going to want to do that. Make sure you click individual layers, and then make sure also all the layers that you want to show up in the effect are checked here, and click OK. Then go into that folder. It's going to have everything laid out for you in numerical order. If you go by name, and then it's going to be in order 1 through 5 or whatever you have. Drag in that first frame that we want, right where you want the transition to start. And then I'm just going to skip like 3 frames at a time. So 1, 2, 3. Drag in that second frame. 1, 2, 3. Drag in that third frame. 1, 2, 3. Fourth frame. 1, 2, 3. Fifth frame. Then 1, 2, 3. We can cut it just like this. And then most of the time you want it to transition to a new clip anyways. So I'm going to have cut here. Drag it over, we can see what we got here. And ideally you would want to match it up with that frame. So let's find the frame of Cordae similar to that. Looks like this frame right here. And then I'm actually going to have it pop up for 1 frame here, and then have the background layer come in. So it kind of transitions a little bit smoother. Just like that. And if you had more frames of your subject, you can have it overlay over the paper texture layer, or you could also have it overlay over this clip here. It's all personal preference, and now you can see the concept of how it's done. I think the effect looks really clean like that. And if you look at our original transition, you can see how just with a few extra clips, and also added a paper texture over these images just to make it a little bit more in depth. And compared to our first one, it's pretty much the exact same. I just animated a few frames of the transition just so it moves a little bit, and I'll show you how to do that real quick. All you really want to do is go to effects controls, and on whatever layer you want it to come in on, you can just click motion and just move it just a little bit, like the littlest amount ever. Keyframe the position, go 1 frame forward, and then just click reset. And now you can see it just has a little bit of movement, and you can do that with scale, you can do that with motion, you can do that with whatever you really want. I'm just going to do motion for the sake of the tutorial. So 1 frame, reset. For this one, let's do scale. So we can start it off at 101 scale, go a frame forward, and reset it. So now there's just like a little bit extra like shake and movement. It almost looks like you're putting down paper. I think it sells the effect a little bit more. Now let's go over this transition. In my opinion, this one's a lot easier to do. You only need like a handful of screenshots. Let's see how many I did for this tutorial. Looks like I did 5 total screenshots here, and you could get away with less or more. Doesn't really matter. Depending on how much movement there is in your clip, you can see that almost all of these screenshots look the same. So I realistically probably could have just done one with a bunch of different paper textures. But I think going the extra little step, screenshotting 5 times and changing it makes it just sell the effect a little bit more. Let's go ahead, again, open up a new file in Photoshop, click create, and then let's go ahead and drag in our first screenshot, and that would be Wayne 1 here. And then for this effect, I'm gonna be using the Ultimate Texture Bundle V2. It's the one that they used in the video. And I'm gonna be using the Rips and Folds pack and just using basically any one from this that you like. So let's do like Black Rip 32. You can scale it down just a little bit. And then all you really have to do is I'm gonna drag the image itself above that, right click on that image and create clipping mask. That way it has the outline of the paper texture itself, and then turn the image itself to screen. And then again, I just want to go through and create that smart object, go to image adjustments, curves, change it down just a little bit. You can also add that tint of paper if you want. These things are all optional. I just want to kind of recreate something similar to what they did in the video. If you wanted to get some look like that, again, just drag up that number. So it's like a little dingy of the paper. I would recommend, again, just making a smart filter layer. That way you don't have to like go and recreate it over and over again. Turn it off, just how we did last time. Control click on both of those, right click and merge the layers. You can name that one. And then all you have to do for this one in the Photoshop side is just drag in the next image and then find a texture that you like. We do the one right next to it. Scale it down just a little bit so it's not touching the edges. Bring the image above, right click, create clipping mask, add it to screen, and then drag that smart filter onto the paper texture layer. Control click on both of those layers, merge, and name it 2. Right now, let's go ahead and just do that because you get the concept of how to do that. Again, go File, Save as a Photoshop file, and we can go into Premiere and show you how to do the effect. So this effect is a little bit more of keyframing in Premiere, so we don't need to go through and show how to do every single frame in Photoshop because it's the same for every single one. If you had 10 frames you wanted to do it on, just do it for 10 frames, save it as the Photoshop file, import it with the individual layers, and then you got all your screenshots, and then you can have something that looks like this. And let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So again, just open up your folder with all the screenshots. I like to go and sort by name. That way it's just in order 1 through 5. And let's go ahead and drag in that first frame of Lil Wayne. I kind of wanted to start it a little scaled down. I think it looks good if you match the frame the screenshot shows up, or the paper ripped version of Lil Wayne matches the background. So I went ahead and when I took the screenshots, I did every 3 frames. So let's go 3 frames forward, 1, 2, 3. And since I took a screenshot every 3 frames, this frame will match up with the frame below. So if we go ahead and just turn it off and on, you can see it's the exact same frame. And let's go ahead and scale it down to the same size as the first screenshot. So 85. Just go ahead and rotate it a little bit so it looks like it's stacking. You can do that pretty easily. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and add that third screenshot on again. Maybe make it 90 this time so it's scaled up just a little bit, and you can rotate it the opposite direction or the same direction, whatever you really want. I like making it look like you can see the stacking. I kind of alternate the rotate negative and positive. 1, 2, 3. Drag this frame on. Make it like 95 this time just so it's a little bit more scaled up. Again, rotating it just a little bit. 1, 2, 3. And for this frame is going to be the frame that's like the most animated. I'm going to scale it all the way up to take up the whole entire frame. You can kind of see the edges of the ripped paper. That's pretty much all you can see. And then I'm going to go through and cut all of the first 4 frames, or every single frame besides the last one, and move this down. And then again, I'm just going to let it sit for 3 frames at a time. So this frame right here is going to ride for 3 frames, 1, 2, 3. And instead of keyframing, I'm just going to cut. In my opinion, it's a little bit easier. So if I cut the layer and then select on the frame where you want it to switch. So it's going to play 3 frames still. And if you cut it here, click on the right frame, it is going to, whatever you change it to, is going to move. Let's go ahead and move it to the left a little bit. Maybe rotate it like 1 degree or something, just so it shakes a little bit. 1, 2, 3. Again, cut it, move it to the left a little bit. It's good to be like a little proportional, but you can just eyeball it as well. Then again, I'm just going to alternate between positive and negative rotation. 1, 2, 3. And you can obviously go whatever direction you want. You don't have to go to the left like I'm doing here and they did in the video. You can go up, you can keyframe the movement of it to really do whatever you want. So keep that in mind. Don't just exactly copy this transition. It's always good to add your own twist to it. And then we're going to do one last frame where it's kind of showing. Yes, just a little bit. 1, 2, 3. Cut it. And then since it's going to be off, you can just delete it. Now you can see when we play that transition, you have like that paper-like transition. This one takes such a short period of time, but it's also like a pretty unique transition, and it looks good from going clip to clip just because it kind of like wipes away. Like I said before, if you wanted to snag any of the paper assets we used in this video, the Ultimate Texture Bundle V2 and V1 are available on my website, link down below, briandelmada.com. Use the code Sinister at checkout. You'll get a special discount code just for watching the video and supporting the channel. So I do appreciate that. Be sure to use that to get a little something off. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for you guys in this one. If you made it all the way to the end, like always, I do appreciate you. Be sure to follow me on social medias, tap in the Discord, all that stuff. Everything's linked down below. Peace.